Morning, everyone. There's a couple of people I want to recognize before I go into the sharing. One is visiting. She served with our church for many years and was actually a community pastor with our church, helped with 2 different church plants. And so if Joanna O could stand up and just show your face, let's welcome her back, visiting from New Zealand. And another visitor, I came to this church at the end of 2005. That's when I started attending, and he was part of the welcoming team. Very instrumental in keeping this church going, and was also one of the first board members of this church. So let's welcome Brian Wee. Brian Wee, so glad you're here, brother. It's good to see you. All right, it's good to have you guys here today. As Pastor Susie said, today is going to be a little different. My sharing is going to be kind of short because there's some testimonies that I want to share with you guys from a conference that I attended recently. The title of today's message is God's Faithfulness. This goes along with the sermon series, God's Promises, and also goes along with the Advent series. Today is Joy. Joy. So speaking of joy, I come from one of those all-American white families where at Christmas is a big celebration. Think Home Alone or one of those movies that you've seen where all the cousins and uncles and aunts, I had 5 uncles, my grandparents, all got together, and just a ton of gifts under the tree. That was my Christmas growing up. And so when I was young, I couldn't sleep Christmas Eve because I couldn't wait to get up in the morning and go downstairs and see the stockings filled with gifts and see all the gifts under the Christmas tree. This is a tradition in my family going back hundreds of years, believe it or not. Christmas is a big thing for my family. Now I'm a father. And our little one, Ria's in the back with my wife, Sky, in the middle there. There she is. Hi. So this is going to be her second Christmas. And Sky and I were discussing what type of traditions do we want to do with our children. And, Ria's at a point right now where she wouldn't understand gifts. So likely we'll just wrap up a banana and give it to her, and she will be delighted. So one of her favorite things in the world is a banana. But there's going to come a time where she's going to get a little older, and she's going to start to understand gifts, and she's going to start to understand wish lists and things like that. And so talking with Sky, I just really felt I want to continue this gift tradition. I want our child to anticipate Christmas, to be excited for the gifts that she's going to receive, and to experience a lot of joy on Christmas Day. And I've carried this tradition. This is, for Zion Home. Jerusalem Ministry also gives gifts to other homes. Home I've served at since 2005. They expect it every year. The kids say, oh, Jam, they start asking me about Christmas in September, October, because they know they're going to get a gift. They're so excited. And, what's neat about it is that their excitement comes from a place of trust. You see, when I was really little and I didn't understand Christmas, I didn't anticipate it. Even though I got gifts, I didn't know I would get it again the next year. But as I started to get a little older, I started to realize, my parents lay out these gifts for me. My parents ask me what I want. And so I would start to get excited because I trusted my parents. I got the gifts before. I'm going to get more gifts the next year. Okay? So I want you to think about that. There's a parallel to this with Christmas and Jesus. You see, in Luke 2, we just read about the shepherds. They're told that Jesus has come. And in their excitement, they ran to the manger. They saw that what they had been told had been fulfilled, and they left glorifying God. Jesus hadn't done anything. He was just a little baby. But they knew God is real, and God is faithful to his promises. There had been all these prophetic words in Scripture about the Savior coming. And there had been hundreds and hundreds of years of waiting. And that day they saw God is real, and God is faithful. And there was great excitement. Now we're on the other side of Christmas. Jesus has come. We remember that gift, on Christmas Day. We don't usually, solemnly think about the cross or anything. We think about the gift of Jesus, the gift of God sending his Son, these promises fulfilled. But in that same line, there should be an anticipation and an excitement for us that that's not the only gift our Father is giving to us. You see, Jesus is coming again. And when he comes the second time, that's when sin temptation, pain, suffering, all of these things will be taken away. Revelation 21:4 says, he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, nor mourning, nor crying, nor shame. For the old order of things has passed away. God has been faithful, sending his son one time, but there's all these other scripture, far more scripture pointing to the second return. It's going to be even greater. You know, on Christmas Day, I might remember a gift I got the year before, but I'm far more excited for the next gift, right? And I want you guys to think about this on Christmas now. That there's the gift we've already received, but there's a greater gift that's coming. And like little children anticipating what their father is going to give them for Christmas, we can anticipate and trust and know with joy God will fulfill his promises for us in the future. Amen? You know, the early church, they didn't greet each other with shalom or hello or hallelujah. They greeted each other with Maranatha. The Lord comes. Come, Lord Jesus. There was an anticipation. And I'm hungry for the church, you know, to experience that excitement again. So God is faithful. He has been faithful. He is faithful, and he will be faithful. And today I want to share with you guys some testimonies, just showing his faithfulness, just how beautiful he is. And so this past October, at the end of October, I flew out to Arizona for a Celebrate Life conference for Life Song for the Orphans. I went with Yoon Lee, one of the Oak Tree Project staff, and our first graduate, Chiwi Park, and we were asked to share for about 15 minutes our own testimony during one of the sessions. And Life Song, they're a ministry that promotes adoption, and they also support ministries that serve the orphans in 16 different countries. They're a wonderful ministry. They support ministries in Ukraine, Zambia, you know, I can't count them all, but 16 different countries, and they're legit. This conference was at a Ritz-Carlton in Arizona. That's the Ritz. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It's a 5-star hotel. It's very nice, beautiful scenery, hiking trails, pools, and things like that. And the conference ended up being way different than what I expected. It was very raw. It was very raw and genuine and cut no corners about the difficulties of walking with God, but also the joy, that it's worth it, you know. And one of the themes that they kept talking about was that most people in life will ask these 3 questions regarding different things, including faith. And they'll ask, will I be safe? Is there a cost? Is success guaranteed? Will I be safe? Is there a cost? Is success guaranteed? And time again, this is what we heard at the conference. No, you won't be safe. Yes, there will be a cost. And no, success is not guaranteed. But it's worth it. It's worth it. God's love and his grace are worth every trial. It's worth every difficulty. It's worth living and following Jesus. He is so good. It's only by his grace we are saved. So some testimonies, like I said, were from these different countries. Before we show the video, the Ukraine testimony was a bit long. The Life Song Ministry started in Ukraine, supporting different orphanages, holding soccer camps, very similar to Jerusalem ministry there. And this Ukraine war has been very real for this ministry because a lot of their orphanages are in that area of battle zone. And so I believe they have 16 different pastors in Ukraine serving, and they shared that to travel around the world, around the equator, is 6,500 miles. I don't know what that is in kilometers, but it's a lot to go around the world. And these 16 pastors had traveled around the world, I think, more than once, getting refugees out of Ukraine and into Poland, driving vans back and forth, Ukraine to Poland. And one of the pastors, while he was driving a van of 13 people, 13 refugees, the van just suddenly stopped on the highway. It just died. And he's driving, and it just starts to fade out. He pulls to the side, and it's just completely dead. He's turning the ignition, hitting the gas. Nothing is happening. He's just wondering what is going on. And then just in that moment, a missile exploded right in front of them, where their van would have been if it was traveling at that regular speed. Just blew up, and they were just stunned, you know, and sat and just, oh my gosh. God saved us. And as they started to come to, he turned the ignition, car was fine, went right back on the road. There are a lot of stories like this. Stories we read about in the Bible, but, oftentimes in our lives when we're not really suffering, we're not really, having to lean on, and stuff, but they're in that position of really trusting in God for their daily bread. One of the orphanages that they support, the director is not a Christian, but they still support the orphanage, and it has 2 buildings. And when their area was starting to get invaded and attacked, they moved to one of the buildings. After moving everyone to one of the buildings, the other building got hit by a missile, cratered. And they showed in the video that orphanage director standing in front of it and saying, Jesus saved us. This could have killed so many people, but God led us to go to the other building. God delivered us. I believe in Jesus. He just gave glory to the Lord. And it was just so beautiful. And so, this conference was full of just wild stories. And these speakers weren't trained speakers either. They had a few guest speakers that were trained speakers, but honestly, it was the just regular people whose stories were just so powerful. And so the first testimony I want to share with you guys is just from a regular couple from America who adopted a couple kids. Again, not trained speakers, not ministers, not, whatever, just a regular couple who adopted. But their story's really sweet. And so I hope this blesses you guys. We'll go ahead and cue it up. I'm going to move this out of the way.
Good evening, everyone. We're Wes and Casey Matthew, and we're so thankful to be here. I just want to say one other thing. Oh, no. This weekend has been amazing for us, and I think I fulfilled all my wife's dreams and done all the white American things of hiking, biking, swimming, and everything. And it's everything she wanted. So yes. Thank you, and we're here to share a little about our story also. So.
That was not on the script, by the way. Well, when Wes and I got married in 2003, we had big dreams and big plans. We were going to pay off our school loans and set to work on a 10-kid plan. Have a few, adopt a few, and live happily ever after. Well, about 4 years passed, and we still were not pregnant, so we realized God maybe wasn't listening to our plans.
So after a last-minute trip to Latvia, working with orphans, God confirmed in our heart the call to adoption.
So the adoption ball started rolling, and just in time, we had heard that India had opened their adoptions to non-Indians. And this was amazing news, considering I'm white. So we sent our application to India, and meanwhile, we decided to visit a few fertility doctors, and a few exhausting months later, we were told that we had unexplained infertility. And during the emotional roller coaster of infertility, I clung to Isaiah 55:8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, says the Lord. It sounded really good in print, but boy, oh boy, is it hard to believe that sometimes in real life. But the Lord was faithful to show himself strong, and I knew in my core it was all part of his plan, and he was asking me to trust him.
So we prayed about IVF and didn't feel like God was asking us to take that path. Actually, I didn't pray about it. I saw the $15,000 price tag, and I was like, not for me. So we needed that money for adoption. So. Well, on my birthday, we received an email with our referral picture from India. This precious girl stole our hearts. A short year later, we were in India meeting her for the first time.
And man, does God exceed expectations. Priya was a dream. Sweet and kind and silly, smart and beautiful. We brought her home in April of 2010, and our lives were turned upside down. So less than 1 year later, we applied for our second adoption to India. Well, things didn't go quite as smoothly or quickly with our second adoption, and it started to drag on for months and months that turned into years. And here we were, willing and ready to take in another child, but did God not think we were ready? Why was he withholding another child from us?
And on top of that, we were struggling with just one income and a kid in tow. Casey was staying at home and had left her lucrative teaching career behind her. And who knew the dental work alone for a kid could be in the thousands? I thought they were all going to fall out anyway.
So as our second adoption moved at a snail's pace, we finally had saved up enough money to pay should that adoption referral come around. Well, one day, Wes went to the emergency room with severe abdominal pains. And 4 ER visits and weeks in and out of the hospital later, our adoption savings was now depleted. We really began to wonder, does God even want us to adopt again? Maybe we really are on the wrong track here.
So a few Sundays later, we were shocked at church when our pastor had several adoptive families come on stage. We were told that it was going to be a prayer time for adoptive families and efforts to promote adoption and foster care in our congregation. While on stage, our pastor surprised us and told us that we were being gifted a $15,000 grant through Lifesong for Orphans. And no one knew that was the exact amount we had saved and then promptly spent it on medical bills. We wept on stage, and this was our first introduction to Lifesong.
Try not to get emotional. I do remember walking off that stage and elbowing Wes and asking him, who did you tell? How did they know how much we needed? This is so crazy. And Wes swore he knew nothing about it. It was the Lord. The Lord knew, and he knew us, and he knew our needs, our struggles, the health issues. He knew it all. And he cared so much, and he used our church through Lifesong to just make us feel known and loved through that difficult time.
And then about 3 weeks later, we got a referral of Sweet Hope, the sweetest little angel we could ever see.
Don't cry. Oh, man. Sorry, that picture just gets me. So in April of 2014, oh man, you guys, we got to go meet her and miraculously bring her home. We were so thankful, and God handpicked the 2 sweetest, just most beautiful girls in the world for us. But although Hope was so sweet, it didn't take me long at all to see that she wasn't attaching as quickly and as easily as Priya had. She resisted our hugs, or any physical touch for that matter, specifically from me. She loved and adored Wes in every way, but as for me, she just politely turned me away. So I started trying to bond with her in every way possible. I did every girly mom-daughter thing that our city and beyond had to offer. Mommy-daughter dates, mommy-daughter retreats, mommy-daughter, you name it. And she politely obliged, but I knew she was pushing me away, and it hurt badly. And if I said go left, she went right. She was not going to be mothered by me.
And on top of that, this sweet girl needed OT, PT, ST, and every other 2-letter therapy you can imagine. So after we ran out of ideas, we turned to attachment therapy, another 2-letter therapy. Newsflash, therapy is expensive. So we paid for the first month, and I thought I was done. But then the therapist tells us we probably need 5 more years of this. And I was like...
So yes, my Indian money-saving husband almost fell out of his chair. And I have to admit, I was starting to resent our child at this point. Just why was everything so difficult? Why couldn't it just go how our first adoption went? We were bending over backwards trying to meet all the hundreds of needs, and it just stung even worse because she pushed me away. And now we had to figure out a way to come up with $800 more per month to have yet another therapy in our schedule. Fatigue really doesn't even begin to describe what we were feeling. There was a lot of anger and frustration, resentment, just wondering, had it all been a mistake?
Once again, God showed up. Our adoption minister, who supported us tremendously and always just seemed to know when we were drowning, reached out and told us that we've been gifted with a $10,000 grant for post-adoption services through Lifesong. We were so humbled and grateful.
And through that generous gift from our church, once again through Lifesong, we were able to start attending weekly therapy sessions and start to see small victories with our sweet girl. And we went to these weekly sessions that focused on processing her trauma and working on our attachment. I can't even begin to put into words what this post-adoption support has meant to us. It has literally been a lifeline for us if we have had to walk with her through so many hard things. And I'm happy to report 4 years of therapy later, Hope is doing so much better. I know, she's so sweet. But it has been a long and painful and a very slow process. Like, I wanted to graduate from therapy already. And while she has definitely progressed in her attachment with me, we still have these glimmers of, I don't need you, I don't even like you, and I can take care of myself. I mean, she did take care of herself, after all, for more than 6 years before she had us. Well, in God's mysterious ways, all of that pushing me away changed last summer. It was our last night of family vacation in Florida. The sunset was approaching, and Hope wanted to go out for one last boogie board adventure before calling it a day. And I was done being in the water. She's an excellent swimmer, swim team champion, in fact. So I agreed, and I just said, don't go past your knees since I'm not going to be in the water with you.
And side note, I'm never in the water. I don't know how to swim well, and I don't need a tan. And so I'm always in the shade building sandcastles. So,
true story. So set to work helping build the sandcastle. And next thing I know, I hear a faint scream in the distance. And I look up, as really at this time we were only one of 2 families still at the beach. And I see Hope out in the water about 100 yards away, a football field away. And I jumped to my feet and I yelled, "Hope, what are you doing? Come back. You are too far." And I'm doing this. And she was so far out that I could barely see her facial expression. And all of a sudden it hit me. She needs help. Oh God, she needs help. So I don't know. I guess I thought I was Baywatch at that point. I don't know. I just took off running towards her. And before I knew it, the strongest, fiercest current I have ever felt just washed me underwater. Oh my Lord. I thought, she is in this current. Jesus, help me get to her. And I just started swimming and begging God. I would see Hope go underwater, and I would beg God, no, God. I don't want that story. This is not our story. God, have mercy. Do not let me lose sight of her. And then her little head would pop up. And I would swim. And at one point, this went on for several seconds, I saw Hope go underwater, and I saw her boogie board float away. And I screamed, "No, Jesus. Help me." And somehow, by God's mercy, I reached her. She threw her body on me in exhaustion, and I grabbed her by the face and said, "You have to swim with me." And I began to pull her towards this shallow sandbar that I could see nearby. And every stroke just felt like the mercy of God. When we reached the sandbar, she collapsed into my arms and sobbed like a baby. I have never had a longer, tighter hug from this child, and had never seen even this many tears. When we got back to the house that evening, she snuggled up to me on the couch. This has literally never happened. And I embraced her, of course, and I pulled her close. And she says to me, "Thanks for coming for me. Thank you for saving my life. I didn't know you loved me that much, that you would do that for me." And I wept. How could she say that? How could she not know that I loved her that much? How could she possibly believe that I wouldn't come for her? What more could I have possibly done in these years to express my love and affection for her? And since that moment, our relationship has turned around. I get daily hugs, daily "I love yous," more affection from her than I ever imagined would be possible. And God, in his infinite wisdom and mysterious ways, chose this very near-death experience to breathe life into our relationship. We still have our struggles, of course, but I feel like for the first time, the path that we're on has a light at the end. And we're so thankful, and so much joy has been restored in my heart.
I did have a thought, not to take it away, but God did in 2 minutes what I've been paying for a therapist in 4 years. But I'm not for drowning or anything, but just some ideas. So.
Always got to bring it home. Well, but it makes me wonder how many of us are just like Hope. We have learned and we've known about the love of a father. We've heard over and over again how much he loves us, how he knows us and he cares for us and he sees us. And yet we don't feel that and we don't experience it. And we doubt he even cares at all. But Romans 5:8 tells us God demonstrated his love for us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And God paid the ultimate price to rescue us, to save us, his children, who've been adopted into his family by grace. And we don't believe we're loved, then we look at the cross. Thank you, Jesus. And experiencing that love, it's transformative. One day at a time, as we realize that we're known and loved by Almighty God, it moves us.
So these years have been so full of surprises, and God has worked in many ways that we could have never chosen, but have been better than we could imagine. One day when we were almost 40, Casey brought home this dollar stick from Walgreens and told me that we were having a baby. I told her she was crazy. I never heard of this peeing on the stick thing, telling me some life-altering news. So I went back to Walgreens and bought some better name brand ones. And after 4 of those, she told me to pee on the next one. So, and then I brought some with me for evidence. But God surprised all of us, and he gave us 2 biological sons within 18 months of each other. And man, they're awesome. And it's very humbling when you see what happens when your own DNA gets in the mix of a little human. Lord help us, please.
We shed so many tears of gratitude and disbelief, shock and excitement and awe. God is so kind. And I'm so glad that he didn't go with our plans after all. Turns out he writes much bigger, better stories than we could ever imagine. For what is impossible with man is possible with God.
We're invited to this conference at the Ritz, and I'm just like, who are these people that are going to be there? And there were CEOs. They were very well-to-do people. One of the guest speakers was a guy that I love, Ernie Johnson, who's inside the NBA. If any of you guys like basketball, he's one of the famous MCs. And but then as I got to know the people there, like them and so many others, they're just so down to earth. And I'd say, how many kids do you have? Oh, we have 8. Oh, we have 12. And one of our board members was there, and he said, hey, some of these people are like super rich, but you know how they live? They pray every year, and okay, God, we're going to live off of this much, say like $100,000, 150 grand, I don't know, but this much, and the rest we're just going to give. Millionaires, multimillionaires, are just going to give. And their adoption stories, we often think, when people come to the orphanage to serve with me, they think the orphans are going to be like, oh, I love you, and like so happy. But no, they're a lot of them are very hurt. They don't trust anybody. They're not easy. And people think with adoption as well, oh, it'd be so easy. It'd just be so wonderful. The kid will appreciate us so much. But no, there's a lot of hurt in adoption as well. There's a lot of, every kid who's adopted, and there's a beauty in adoption, but there's also a pain, okay? And we have to recognize both. You can't just expect the joy, And some of these adoption stories, like what you just heard, are very extreme. One of the speakers, she spoke at Passion, one of these big conferences, and she came to this thing, and she was just so raw. She had adopted, she didn't allow it to be on, the video, but they had adopted a boy from Africa. They had a wonderful family, adopted a boy from Africa, and he was much worse, reactive attachment disorder, just a mess. And it got to the point where they were like, do we give this kid back? Like, what have we done? Just destroying the family, destroying them, exhausting. And she's like a famous author, speaker, someone you think is just like, has it all together. But they were being tested. And, so often we think, oh, everything's just going to be easy, if we follow God, or, oh, there's just rich life is the easy life. But no, it's not about rich or poor. It's not about, whatever. It's just about following God. And with following God, there's going to be challenges. But with challenges, there's grace. And with every sharing that we heard, they were very honest and real about how difficult it was. And I know it was far more difficult than she even shared there. And what that Passion Conference speaker shared was even way more difficult. But there's been grace. And God is he's faithful. That's the theme. God is faithful. And even among the difficult times, there is joy, an inner joy that comes only from him. The rest of the world would say, you're crazy, give up the kid, you're crazy. We've had mentors serve with us whose friends have said, stop mentoring. That kid's hard for you. Just give him up, And that's a very worldly way to view it, Don't be with anyone who's a hassle, no matter what their background is. But our mentors continue because they have the love of God in their hearts, and they get strength, they get grace, they get encouragement, from us in prayer, and they're able to continue on. So we're going to share one more testimony. This is from a guy named Zawadi with his family, and he's originally from Zambia. So let's share one more testimony. Yeah, let's do that right here.
Hi, everyone. Let's see here. We are the Morrow family. I'm Zawadi, and this is my wife, Erin.
Hi, this is Kavira. Kavira, what's been your favorite thing that you've done here so far?
The swimming pool.
And who are you?
Cohen.
And what's your favorite thing you've done so far this time?
The slide.
The slide. That's been awesome. Thanks for hanging. These guys are a circus, so we're going to let them
I have another
head down.
thing. I have another thing.
You have another thing?
Yeah, one more.
One more.
One
Okay.
last one, okay.
This is like a... I also like the ice cream.
Ice cream.
The ice cream.
All right. While we let those guys head down, I want to tell you guys a story. And this story takes place a little over 30 years ago in the heart of Africa, in a country called the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A baby was born in a small village in the foothills of the Ituri forest, and that little baby only had the opportunity to know their mother for a few hours before she passed on from this world. The baby's father wasn't in the picture, and the tribe that the baby was born into blamed the baby for the death of the mother and intended to bury the baby alongside of the mother. So here was this helpless newborn baby with no mother, no father, and no hope. In fact, the name that they gave this little one was Duabo Ngundukali. Duabo, which means his mother left him, and Ngundukali, which means without brothers. But that's not where the story begins. To do that, we need to wind the clocks back another 20 years or so to the late 1960s, to Belfast, Northern Ireland, where a young German woman met and fell in love with a young Irishman. And several years later, they were married, and they sensed God's call to move halfway across the world to the Congo, to a tiny village in the east part of the country. And there they worked among the people, and they raised two beautiful children. And one rainy morning, a midwife knocked on their door and explained that a baby had been born in the clinic earlier that day and that that baby's mother had passed away. She continued to explain the tribal traditions and how the community would blame the baby for the death of the mother and how the baby likely wouldn't survive. And so this happy family of four was faced with one of the most significant decisions of their life: to do nothing or to adopt that little baby. And that day they decided to adopt that little baby. They decided to adopt me. I'm here today in this room because I was given a gift I was given a gift of life, a gift of love. I got to grow up not as Duwabo and Gundukali, without mother, without brothers, but as Zawadi. In the tribe that I was born into, a name is not simply what you are called. Your name is significant. That midwife who saved my life told that European couple God had given them a gift in me, and that's what they should name me, not Duwabo and Gundukali, but Zawadi, which means gift. Through adoption, God stepped into the messiness and the brokenness of my world and boldly declared that death was no longer my name. Unwanted was no longer my name. Unloved was no longer my name. Duwabo and Gundukali is no longer my name. I have a new name now. Wanted is my name now. Beloved is my name. Known is my name. Zawadi is my name. The gift that I was given that day was getting to grow up knowing exactly who I was, exactly whose I was. I got to grow up and learn the story of Jesus, the story of a perfect and righteous God who stepped down from heaven, entered into the messiness and the brokenness of my world and our world in order to adopt us and in order to give each of us a new name.
When we were first married, Zawadi was in seminary full-time, so I worked to provide the income for our family. We were making $16,000 a year for those first few years, but we got to witness God's miraculous provision for us during those years. And even though children were still several years in the future for us, we wanted to begin taking faithful steps of obedience towards our desire to adopt. We started an adoption coin jar on our dresser. Each day we would pass by it, we would take our change or whatever money we had left over and drop it in the jar. Now, several years later, after the birth of our son Cohen, we made the drive down the street to our local UPS store to send off our adoption paperwork. There was a flood of emotions as we reflected on the decisions Zawadi's parents made 30 years ago. We had no idea how we were going to pay for all the next adoption expenses, but God showed us this verse from 1 Thessalonians 5:14. Don't forget that the one who called you is faithful, and he will do it. And boy, did that verse get tested. Our adoption process took just over 22 months, and it was probably the most difficult couple of years of life to this point for us. During that time, we learned that our 1-year-old son was dealing with a number of health issues that were taking a toll on our family. I resigned from my full-time job in order to stay home and care for him. Zawadi also transitioned jobs during this season, and we were struggling to adjust to the new church community in which he was serving. In addition to all that, he was still touring with a band as a professional musician to help make up my missing salary. As we continued to progress through the international adoption process, the realities of the financial cost continued to loom larger and larger. I would spend countless hours filling out grant applications, running yard sales, and selling jewelry. We were exhausted. There were many nights of us asking, God, how are we going to do this? But each time God would answer, don't forget that the one who called you is faithful and he will do it. Because of encouraging conversations with friends, small health improvements in Cohen, and matching grants that we received from Lifesong and from several others, God carried us through this season. With each new challenge, the answer would come louder still. Don't forget that the one who called you is faithful and he will do it. So finally, the day before Thanksgiving, we boarded a flight bound for Beijing. On the flight, I wrote in my journal this excerpt. It's November 22nd, 2018, Thanksgiving Day. We have 4.5 hours left on our flight to Beijing. This journey is so much more than I thought it would be. It's taught me perseverance, gratefulness, determination, patience, and sacrifice in ways I had not experienced before. What a holy place to be, to get to see restoration, to see healing, to see brokenness, to get to tend to heart's wounds and scars, to get to learn another person created in the image of God. Kavira, we've come so far to find you. The thought of you and first hopes and whispers of you were beginning around 11 years before you were born. I'm ready. I'm ready to trade paperwork for hugs and kissing away tears. Ready to transition my mind from grant applications to braiding white hair and brushing brown curls with undivided care and attention. Ready to shift looking for typos to gazing into ocean blue and coffee brown eyes with affection and intention. I'm ready to slow down my heart but increase its capacity to love as we add another family member in just a few short days. I'm ready to parent too with the best daddy anyone could ask for. You are meant to be. Kavira, you are so very loved and wanted. We're coming, sweetie. 1,799 miles to go, 3 hours, 47 minutes, but we're almost there and coming as fast as we can. 540 miles per hour to be exact. Love, your mom.
So I remember the night before we were to meet Kavira feeling a really profound sense of significance. I remember having trouble going to sleep. I just couldn't stop thinking about how me, a kid from the Democratic Republic of Congo, was now halfway across the world in a foreign country whose language I didn't know, about to adopt a little girl who needed a family just like me. Don't forget that the one who called you is faithful and he will do it. And just like that young midwife gave me a new name all those years ago, it was now my privilege to give our little girl a new name. As you've heard, her name is Kavira, and it's a Swahili name just like mine. It's the name that belonged to the young midwife who saved my life. Her name was Kavira, and now my daughter bears that name. And the next day, after going through all of the things that we did at the orphanage as we were preparing to leave, the orphanage director wanted to take us to the place where she was found. And I remember pleading with our translator to communicate to the orphanage director that I did not want to do that. But despite my objections, we found ourselves in the back of a minivan on our way to the location. The van came to a stop, and the orphanage director pointed to a nondescript tree on the side of a busy highway. He motioned me over, signifying that this was where she was found. And I shuddered. It was as if my body was anticipating the anger that I knew was about to well up inside of me. But there wasn't any anger, and there wasn't any confusion. In fact, I was overwhelmed with a sense of peace. Because in that moment, I saw Jesus. I saw the empty tomb. I saw the angel telling the woman that Jesus is not here, that he's alive. And as I stood under the tree, my daughter's body wasn't there either. She was alive, and she was safe and cherished in her mom's arms. And that's the story. That's why I'm here. That's why we're here. I think that's why you're here. To continue to tell the gospel story. To tell that story over and over and over again and again and again. To tell that story with our words. To tell that story with our actions. To tell that story with our finances. We tell that story. And as others hear that story, dead things find life. And broken things find purpose. Lost things find meaning. Orphans find homes. It's because of Jesus that we're all known. And it's because of Jesus that we have a story to tell. Don't forget, the one who called you is faithful, and he will do it. Thank you.
I'm going to invite up the praise team and let you guys stand to your feet. We're going to sing. God is so good. Amen. He came, he died, he rose again, and he is coming again. There's joy for his first coming. There's joy, anticipation, great expectation for his second coming. And all along that time, he's still with us. His name is Emmanuel. He is God with us. His Holy Spirit is living inside us. And so I want us to close this message by just giving him worship, joy, and adoration. Let's sing to him.